Cleopatra is probably the most portrayed woman in all of ancient history. Hollywood turned her into a tragic seductress. Rome turned her into a threat that had to be destroyed and erased from memory. And for 2,000 years, almost everyone accepted the same version of her end. A defeated queen who chooses to die by her own hand, in silence, with a snake across her chest. There's a problem with that story, and it's a problem of physics, not interpretation. An Egyptian cobra large enough to kill a grown woman doesn't fit in a basket of figs. And that same night, according to the Roman accounts themselves, Cleopatra wasn't the only one to die. Her two handmaids, Iras and Carmian, also died, almost simultaneously, in the same room. A snake doesn't cause that. A precisely prepared poison does. For 2,000 years we searched for his tomb, assuming we already knew how he died. It's possible we were wrong about both things at once. And what a team of archaeologists found in the last 2 years, in a nearly forgotten temple west of Alexandria, doesn't solve the mystery. It opens it up even further. If you're interested in the story that almost no one tells in full, stay tuned, because what follows is not the version you learned in school, and the person rewriting it is not who you would expect. When Cleopatra died in 30 BC, Rome already controlled Egypt, and Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, had every reason to publicly humiliate her and erase her legacy. And yet, the Roman chroniclers themselves, Plutarch and Cassius Dio, wrote that she was buried with royal honors, next to Mark Antony, in a mausoleum fit for a queen. Therein lies the first crack in this story. If Rome wanted to destroy its image, why did it allow a royal burial? And if there was a royal burial, why has no one, in 2,000 years of excavations, been able to pinpoint the exact location? It's not that there's a lack of candidates. What's lacking is definitive proof. Between 320 and 1303 AD, Egypt's Mediterranean coast was shaken by at least 23 documented earthquakes. Several of them submerged entire sections of Alexandria, including areas where, according to ancient texts, the royal palace stood. So the question is no longer just where the tomb is. It's whether there's still anything left to find, or if the sea claimed it 15 centuries ago. To understand why a particular temple became the obsession of a single woman for 20 years, one must first understand who Cleopatra was outside of the Hollywood myth. She was not just a beautiful queen surrounded by powerful men. She spoke at least 7 languages, unusual even among Ptolemaic rulers, most of whom didn't even learn Egyptian. She ruled an empire that depended entirely on controlling grain and the Nile's floods. And, before her people, she presented herself not as a foreigner of Greek origin, but as the living embodiment of the goddess Isis, wife of Osiris. This religious identity was not mere propaganda. It was a calculated political strategy to legitimize her power in the eyes of the Egyptian priests, who wielded more real influence over the people than any army. And here is a detail that almost no documentary mentions, and which is worth remembering for later. According to Plutarch, before her death, Cleopatra experimented with different poisons on condemned prisoners to determine which one produced the least painful death. Keep that information in mind for a moment. That's not the gesture of someone acting out of desperation at the last minute. It's the gesture of someone who investigates, assesses, and plans ahead, just as he planned his alliances with Julius Caesar or Mark Antony. The temple in question was built by Ptolemy IV around 280 BC, almost a century and a half before Cleopatra was born. Its name, Taposiris Magna, literally means the Great Tomb of Osiris. It was no ordinary temple. It was dedicated to the Egyptian god of resurrection, the same god to whom Cleopatra, as the living Isis, considered herself symbolically married. And that identity wasn't just empty religious symbolism. Cleopatra inherited a throne at a time when the Ptolemaic dynasty had been losing the respect of its own people for generations. Her ancestors were descendants of a Macedonian general of Alexander the Great. Greek rulers imposed on an Egyptian population that saw them, at best, as foreign administrators. Cleopatra did something none of her predecessors had done with such intensity. She appeared dressed as an Egyptian goddess at public ceremonies, minted coins with Egyptian religious symbolism, and learned the language of a people her own ancestors had never bothered to speak. To the Egyptian priests, that meant something. To Rome, It meant a threat unlike any other foreign monarch. A queen who ruled not only with armies, but with genuine religious legitimacy among the people Rome needed to control. That fact matters for what comes next, because if Cleopatra built her political power on an Egyptian religious identity, it makes sense that she would also have planned her final resting place within that same symbolic framework, rather than a purely Greek mausoleum within Alexandria. In 2005, a Dominican criminal lawyer named Kathleen Martinez arrived in Egypt without any degree in archaeology. She had a hunch, almost a criminal investigator's intuition, that Cleopatra's tomb was not in Alexandria, where generations of Egyptologists had searched for it without success, but 45 kilometers to the west, inside that temple dedicated to Osiris. The academic community almost completely ignored it. According to several contemporary accounts, the very idea that a Ptolemaic queen might have been buried inside a temple, rather than in a separate mausoleum, contradicted decades of Egyptological consensus. Zahi Hawass himself would later declare that the Egyptians never buried people inside a temple, and that therefore Martinez's hypothesis made no sense. She didn't leave. She financed her first expedition with her own money, without strong institutional backing, supported only by the Catholic University of Santo Domingo. 2 decades later, his team had found more than 800 artifacts, a necropolis with over 1,000 human remains spread across at least 20 catacombs, and 16 Greco-Roman mummies with gold tongue-shaped amulets placed inside their mouths. A funerary ritual intended to allow the deceased to speak before the tribunal of Osiris in the afterlife. Some of these mummies still contained fragments of papyrus and remnants of gilded cartonnage, something extremely rare to find intact after 2,000 years. But the discovery that changed the scale of the project was something else entirely. A tunnel 1,305 meters long, excavated some 13 meters underground, with such precision that archaeologists directly compared it to the tunnel of Eupalinos on the Greek island of Samos, one of the most admired feats of hydraulic engineering of classical antiquity. And here's the detail that unsettled even the skeptics. That level of precision was achieved without any of the modern tools we would now consider essential for drilling through limestone with such accuracy, to that depth in a straight line. A temple that for centuries was considered a secondary ruin, suddenly held under its foundations something that no one had anticipated finding. There was also another discovery, a few years earlier, that is rarely mentioned alongside the tunnel find, and which deserves its own attention. In 2018, Martinez's team located a cemetery with 15 additional catacombs, 800 bodies and 14 mummies, all from the same period. That same year, statements made by Zahi Hawass at a conference at the University of Palermo generated rumors that the discovery of the tomb was imminent. Hawass publicly denied these rumors in the Egyptian newspaper Al Ahram, clarifying that the theory that the tomb was in Taposiris Magna had never been his, but solely Martinez's. The episode revealed something important about how this search is conducted. Each new discovery almost automatically reopens the same unanswered question, and each time that happens, the scientific community is divided between hope and caution. In September 2025, that underground clue led to something that completely changed the magnitude of the discovery. Martinez sought help from someone completely outside the world of Egyptology. Robert Ballard, the oceanographer who in 1985 located the wreck of the Titanic on the bottom of the North Atlantic. Off the western coast of Alexandria, Ballard's team used sonar and underwater vehicles to survey the seabed near Taposiris Magna. What they found was an ancient port, now submerged. Cemented stone blocks, columns more than 6 meters high covered in sediment, anchors from that era and fragments of Greek and Roman amphorae, the containers that were used to transport wine, oil and grain throughout the Mediterranean. What made that discovery change everything wasn't just the port itself. It was its exact alignment with the already known tunnel. The underground passage beneath the temple pointed, in a direct line, toward those same underwater ruins, as if land and sea had formed, 2,000 years ago, a single, purposefully designed access system. "We found it," Ballard declared of the discovery, and the tunnel pointed directly there. A temple that seemed completely isolated on the mainland had, all this time, an exit to the sea that no ancient map had recorded. This is where the story ceases to be just field archaeology and becomes something more uncomfortable. an open and public dispute between two of the most influential names in contemporary Egyptology. In December 2024, Martinez's team announced the discovery of a white marble bust, carved with a royal crown, found alongside coins bearing Cleopatra's face, an amulet dedicated to the god Ra, and a collection of ritual objects. Martinez cautiously but confidently suggested that the bust might represent the queen herself. Zahi Hawass, the former Egyptian minister of antiquities and arguably the most renowned figure in modern Egyptology, disagreed. As he publicly stated to the specialized press, he examined the piece in detail and reached a different conclusion. For him, the carving style was clearly Roman, not Ptolemaic. "It's not Cleopatra at all," he asserted. "It's Roman. The difference is not a minor academic nuance that only matters to a handful of specialists. It is a head-on collision between two ways of interpreting the same stone, with two professional reputations on the line." And Hawass went even further. He declared that, after having worked at the site himself for more than a decade, there is no evidence that Cleopatra's tomb is in Taposiris Magna. His alternative hypothesis is, in a way, more definitive and more fatalistic. He believes that the true tomb is underwater, near the ancient royal palace of Alexandria, submerged along with the rest of the city by the same earthquakes mentioned earlier. And he added a sentence that sounds almost like a final pronouncement, that this tomb will never be found. The curious thing is that Hawass himself, years before this disagreement, had documented something that indirectly supports Martinez's hypothesis. During previous investigations at the same site, his team noticed that several of the mummies in the necropolis were buried with their faces oriented toward the temple, a pattern that, in his own words at the time, suggested that the structure likely contained the burial of a highly important royal figure, possibly Cleopatra VII herself. That same year, the team also discovered a three-chambered underground tomb beneath the ancient lighthouse of Taposiris Magna, containing 9 white marble busts, as well as foundation deposits under the temple's southern wall. Ceremonial vessels, oil lamps, limestone containers, a bronze ring dedicated to the goddess Hathor, and a scarab amulet inscribed with the words, "The justice of Ra has arisen." None of these objects on its own proves anything, but their accumulation year after year in the exact same spot on the map is what sustains Martinez's persistence after 2 decades without stable funding or unanimous support from his colleagues. And there's a ritual detail that connects directly to the point we left unsaid about Cleopatra's obsessive preoccupation with pain and death. Some of the Greco-Roman mummies found in the necropolis had small gold amulets in the shape of tongues placed inside their mouths. The purpose of this object, according to Egyptian funerary texts, was to allow the deceased to speak before the tribunal of Osiris in the afterlife and defend, in words, the value of their own life. A culture that designed such specific rituals to ensure that a body could speak after death is not a culture that would leave the death of its last queen to the whims of some random snake. 2 experts, the same ruins, evidence that the skeptic himself documented before becoming a skeptic. And yet, neither of them has the final proof that would completely settle the matter. So what really changed with all these findings? It's not that the tomb has been found. It hasn't been found. That needs to be said with complete clarity, without exaggerating what the evidence allows us to affirm. What changed is something more subtle, and in some ways more disturbing. For 2,000 years we assumed that Cleopatra's story ended with a romantic image. A defeated, alone woman who chooses death with tragic elegance, a snake on her chest as a symbol of royalty and of the goddess Isis. But let's return to that detail we left unresolved a few minutes ago. Cleopatra tested poisons on condemned prisoners before they died. She methodically sought the least painful method possible. That's not last-minute improvisation. It's planning months in advance, executed with the same analytical coldness with which he ruled an empire for 2 decades. Modern forensic science supports that interpretation, and it does so with very specific details. An Egyptian cobra large enough to kill an adult measures over 5 feet. That doesn't fit in a basket of figs. And the venom doesn't kill in minutes. It causes a slow and painful death that can take several hours. 3 women don't die like that, together almost simultaneously, with barely any marks on their skin. For centuries, the official explanation centered on a snake. But the Roman chroniclers themselves, Plutarch and Cassius Dio, admitted in writing that no one knew for sure how she had actually died. Cassius Dio even mentioned the possibility of a needle, perhaps hidden in a hairpin. Centuries later, the Roman physician Galen offered yet another version, that Cleopatra bit her own arm and applied poison directly to the wound, using a container she had kept hidden. Even Suetonius, biographer of the Roman emperors, repeated the snake story but expressed explicit doubts about its veracity. For ancient historians, for different versions, and none claiming with certainty to have witnessed what transpired inside that room. There is also a political motive that is almost never mentioned, and which makes understanding the actual method all the more urgent. Octavian needed Cleopatra alive. He planned to take her to Rome in chains, as a war trophy, to parade her before the crowds in his military triumph. That public humiliation was, for a queen who considered herself the embodiment of a goddess, the worst fate imaginable, worse than death itself. So the question is not only how she died. It is also why she managed to die despite Roman vigilance, at a time when her captors had every incentive to keep her alive. What seems most likely, according to modern historians like Christoph Schaefer of the University of Trier, is a controlled mixture of poisons, perhaps in a drink, perhaps in an ointment applied to the skin. A death designed, not suffered, and executed with the same logistical precision with which she evaded, until the very end, the plan of humiliation that Rome had prepared for her. And if death was a carefully planned act, with months of prior testing, why do we continue to search for his grave as if he were the victim of an improvised and desperate end? This doesn't rewrite the entire history of Egypt, but it does change something very specific, the way we understand the final months of the most powerful woman in the ancient world. This is not a queen who simply surrendered. This is a strategist who, until the very last moment, controlled what she could, including the exact manner of her death. Perhaps she also chose, with that same calculating coldness, the place where she would be buried, far from the direct control of Rome, within a temple dedicated to a god who promised resurrection, in a region where her own Egyptian priests still held real authority. What remains unresolved is even more unsettling. If Cleopatra was capable of orchestrating her own death with such precision, did she also orchestrate her own concealment? What if the reason we never found her tomb, after 2 decades of excavations, a tunnel over a kilometer long, and a submerged port, isn't that it was lost by accident, but that someone, herself or the priests who buried her, made sure that no one could find it without her permission? For 2,000 years we decided which version of Cleopatra deserved to survive. The seductress, the victim, the tragic queen who surrenders to a snake. We almost never chose the strategist who tested poisons on others to calculate, with precision, her own end. How many other women in ancient history received the same treatment, the simple, easy-to-film version instead of the uncomfortable one? If this way of telling the story, based on real evidence and real names, and not on convenient legends or invented secret chambers, is what you want to keep hearing, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next queen we're going to unearth kept a secret even harder to believe than this one.